In his first national interview since his release from a Russian prison, American teacher Marc Fogel is opening up about the 1,277 days he spent behind bars in Russia. Fogel served part of that time in one of Putin's most brutal institutions. Now, he was sentenced to 14 years in a Russian penal colony for possessing medically prescribed marijuana. That was it. And then a 14-year sentence. Marc Fogel joins me now for this exclusive conversation out front. And Marc, so 1,277 days there. You came home. You've been home for 17 months. And you have talked about how difficult the journey from coming home to now has been. What are some of the things that have been perhaps the hardest for you?
Well, just readjusting to, the first few months, it was hard to leave the house sometimes. It was hard to just go out to be overwhelmed in a grocery store. I remember one time going and paying for some groceries that I bought, and she wanted me to tap, and I had never done the tap with a credit card, and I could feel myself kind of being a bit angst-ridden and people behind me, and that was just, that. That's one that comes to my mind of like, I didn't know how to do that. I wasn't doing that before, and the pressure of having to do those things just kind of were one of those kind of slaps to me of like a reminder of what I need to do to kind of be recultured into, life as we all know it.
I guess to figure out who you are after, 37 years, you have 4 decades of a teacher, right? You had an identity, you'd been around the world and having to reclaim that. So when all of this started, and you and your wife have been around the world, so many different places. You've operated in places where there would have been friendly and perhaps less friendly governments. In Russia, you get sent to Rybinsk penal colony, which is one of the harshest ones in the entire system that Putin has. What can you share with us about your time there? Those 1,277 days that you thought were just the beginning?
Yeah. Well, you learn very quickly, and having, studied some Russian history, the way they use prisons and how their system works, it's really a normal fact of life for most Russians. That a Russian friend of mine who came to visit me, she said, when I told my friends I was going to visit you, they said, and I said, this is the first time I've been to a prison. And they were all surprised that she had not visited a prisoner before. So the society has a really clear-cut system of incarcerating people that dates back centuries, sending them to Siberia, the Soviets with the Gulag. So when you get into that system, you realize that they have a program that's really well documented. They know what to do, when to press buttons, when not to. And it's a very systematic system but they know what they're doing.
So when you were there, okay, and I know you moved and during that you were in the dark.
I was in 17, 18 different places.
And what was it like when you moved in between?
Those were the worst times. We were herded in trucks with no windows, no seat belts. You were usually smashed in with, without enough room. Like everything is designed to be uncomfortable. That's part of that system.
Yeah.
So you'd be in this truck, everybody's smoking, there's no windows, you're riding on bumpy roads, and you don't know where you're going. And that whole process of moving was, it's really... I could say diabolical. Like it's like a programmed way to make people miserable. So they do that on a regular basis.
Did you ever feel that you didn't want to get to the other end of it, that 14 years was too long? Did you ever lose hope?
Well, that sentence is something that I wore in a name tag all the time. So I was always confronted that I had a 14-year sentence. Which at my age, because it's on your bunk bed, that's something that they're always putting to you. Yeah. Every time I would do one of these trips, when you got on the truck, you had to walk through that Marc Fogel, blah blah blah, and then you would have to say you have a 14-year sentence. So that is just was always pounded in me, which. 60-year people don't live 14 years in Russian prisons. So that was part of, I think, what they were looking to do, in that they gave one of the harshest. I knew murderers didn't get 14-year sentences.
But you knew it was intended to be a death sentence.
And it became very apparent as, I spent more time in the colony, that I knew people that had thousands of times more drugs, that I had worse drugs, not prescribed, who would be given half the sentence that I had, with 1,000 times more volume.
Because you were American, right? That was why it all to begin with. This was medically prescribed to begin with, so it wasn't something that would even cross your mind.
Right.
But as an American, did you feel, were there palpable ways in which you were treated differently?
Every day. Every day there were different ways that I was treated. Sometimes very negatively, sometimes more positively. I was given a looser leash at times. It was very clear as time went on, I was an asset, and they were going to do things to make sure that I was going to get through and manage. And they were doing things like, where I was having many back problems, I would be sent to a prison hospital, which were usually about 3 or 4 weeks. I had done 4 sessions of that. Most Russian prisons would have never been sent to that hospital. But I was, because they were trying to take care of me.
So 2 things from that. One, some of the people that you were with were very, very wealthy people who had gotten on the bad side of Putin.
Some of probably the most fabulously wealthy people I've ever met were in Russian prisons.
Which is incredible.
When I would recount some of the stories, it was just sort of levels of wealth that you see on TV shows.
And you mentioned that the special treatment on the positive side was that you could get care for your back. Now, your sister, Anne, talked about that.
Yeah.
And she was, your entire family were incredibly worked. She came on the show a lot of times, Mark, as you know, because she wanted everyone she didn't let anybody forget about you.
Right.
For you just to become a name of a guy that people forgot. She never let that happen.
How fortunate I am to have the sisters who work for me.
Here she is.
The biased sister that I am. He is a remarkable human being, and his friends know that, and his students know that, and his family knows that.
Did you know how relentlessly?
I've never seen that.
You never saw that?
I have a hard time watching any of this, so I've never seen that. And, she's my little sister, but she's become another big sister for me with what she did.
Did you know how your family was relentlessly fighting for you? Your sisters, your mother, who's 97.
It was really hard to know what was happening with the way I was able to communicate with people back home. When I was speaking on the official phones, which everybody could listen to, there was an ability to say things that were happening, or everybody was uncomfortable. I was later able to use burner phones, and I could have what we thought were more secret conversations where I did find out things.
Burner phones that you could get through, I guess, because they were the rich guys in prison.
Exactly. How the system works in Russian prisons. That, they have 2 types of prisons, red and black. Red is the ones run by the government. Black are the ones run by another type of system with government connections.
Government connections, but more of an organized crime of some sort. So when we watched you deliver a message, you were at this point being held in a cage, okay? You deliver it to your wife, Jane. So this is back in 2021. At this point, you've heard your fate, okay? Yeah. And here you are talking to Jane.
Hi, Jane. I miss you terribly. I just want to be with our family.
I've never seen that.
Do you remember that moment?
Not exactly. When I just watched that for the first time, I think what the trigger in me was how I was holding those bars. But I don't remember the words that were coming out. But I do remember, that position I was in for some reason.
How do you ever get past that agony?
There's too many good things to look forward to be worried about what's behind me. And, you know, I have a friend, Andrei Khachaturian. I want him home. I hope everybody's working to get him home. His mother deserves to have him. His brother deserves to have him. Please help Andrei Khachaturian.
Yeah. Another American, Armenian
Yes,
American.
another
who's
wrongfully detained
in prison
American.
in Russia right now.
Right.
Well, Mark Fogel, it is a great pleasure to finally meet you. I will admit, as we covered it, we never knew if we would ever have this incredible opportunity. So that is a brightness for us, and I thank you so much.
And obviously the pleasure is mine because I am. Thank you so much.